The rain fell in soft, steady drizzles against the window, casting a quiet gray light over the kitchen where Laura sat alone, stirring her tea and trying to shake off the restless thoughts that had been nagging at her all evening. Something about Ethan, her 17-year-old son, had been off lately, a strange heaviness in his usual laughter and a silence that spoke louder than words. Normally, he would be joking about school, talking about his friends, or teasing her in some playful way, but tonight, he seemed different, withdrawn, almost fragile, like a bird that had been startled and didn't know where to fly. Laura watched him from across the room, her heart tightening with a mixture of worry and instinct, and she waited, sipping her tea, wondering what storm had taken hold of her normally confident, bright-eyed son. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, Ethan's voice broke the silence, quiet and hesitant, almost trembling. "Mom, can I talk to you about something?" Laura put the cup down, her hand still warm from the tea, and moved closer to him, kneeling beside his chair, careful to keep her voice calm and inviting. "Of course, Ethan. Whatever it is, you can tell me." She reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from his forehead, her eyes searching his for any sign of what he was feeling, and he looked down at the floor, fumbling with the edge of his sleeve, as if the words were heavy stones he wasn't sure he could lift. After a long pause, his voice barely above a whisper, he admitted, I think I might be gay." Laura froze for a moment, not because she didn't accept him, but because hearing it spoken aloud made the weight of his struggle real in a way that sitting silently beside him never had. Her heart pounded, a rush of protective instinct and maternal love flooding through her, and she reached for his hand gently, holding it in hers. "Ethan, thank you for trusting me with this. I know it's not easy," she said softly, letting him feel her unwavering support. He looked up at her, eyes shining with unshed tears, fear mingled with relief, and whispered, "I don't even know who I am anymore. Mom. I'm scared I won't fit in, or that people will judge me." Laura drew him into a hug, holding him close as he buried his face in her shoulder, and whispered in his ear, "You'll never have to face this alone. We'll figure it out together." The words felt both like a promise and a shield, a warm layer of comfort against the cold uncertainty outside the walls of their home. Yet even as she held him, Laura felt a twinge of fear herself, a knot of worry that twisted deep in her stomach, because she knew the world could be unkind and harsh, and she didn't know what challenges her son might face. The rain continued tapping against the window, a soft, steady rhythm that mirrored the thumping of her heart, and Laura realized she couldn't let this moment pass without acting. She needed to find a way to guide him, to help him understand himself, and to show him that being true to who he was didn't mean being alone. "Ethan," she said after a while, pulling back just enough to look into his eyes, "it's okay to be unsure. What you're feeling is normal, and it's brave to even admit it. You're still you, the same person I've always known and loved." He blinked at her, a small, fragile smile beginning to form, and she could see the relief of being accepted slowly easing the tension in his body. "Really?" he asked, voice small but hopeful. "Really," she replied, squeezing his hand. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. No one expects that from you. All you have to do is be honest with yourself and with me." Ethan nodded slowly, his eyes glimmering with a mix of gratitude and fear, and for the first time in days, he seemed to breathe a little easier. Laura felt a deep surge of love and protectiveness for him, a fierce determination to help him navigate this journey without judgment, without shame, and without fear. They stayed in that embrace for several minutes, listening to the rain, letting the quiet fill the space around them, a silent pact forming between mother and son that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. As they pulled apart slightly, Ethan's hand still in hers, he admitted in a softer tone, almost to himself, "I don't even know how to tell my friends. What if they don't understand? What if they make fun of me?" Laura shook her head gently, brushing his hair from his forehead again, and said with quiet authority, "Then they aren't the friends you deserve. True friends will accept you for who you are, just like I do. And for the rest, we'll take it one step at a time, together." She smiled at him, a calm, reassuring smile that she hoped would anchor him through the storm of emotions swirling inside him, and he managed a small laugh, the first real sound of relief breaking through the tension that had been building for weeks. "Thanks, Mom," he said, his voice steadier now. I feel like I can breathe a little." Laura nodded, feeling a rush of warmth and hope. She knew the journey ahead would be challenging, that there would be moments of doubt, hurt, and fear, but she also knew that together, they could face whatever came next. That night, as Ethan went to his room and Laura cleaned up the kitchen, she couldn't help but glance out at the rain, feeling a quiet determination settle in her heart. She would be his guide, his safe place, his unwavering support, and she would help him discover the courage, self-love, and happiness he deserved. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that this conversation, this confession, was the first step toward a new chapter for both of them, a chapter filled with understanding, acceptance, and the promise that no matter what the world thought, love and family would always come first. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the clouds, casting a soft glow on the park where Laura suggested they go for a walk, hoping the open space and fresh air would help Ethan calm the whirlwind of emotions inside him, and as they strolled side by side, the crunch of fallen leaves under their feet seemed to echo the tension neither of them had fully spoken yet. Ethan kept his hands shoved into his pockets, eyes fixed on the ground, shoulders tense, and Laura noticed the way he hesitated before speaking, as though the words themselves were unfamiliar terrain he wasn't sure he could navigate, and she kept her voice gentle, encouraging, trying to create a space where he felt safe to open up without fear or judgment, finally prompting him to speak when he muttered, "Mom, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm just confused about my feelings for guys?" Laura smiled softly, understanding that at 17, uncertainty could feel like an ocean with no shore, and she reassured him, "Being confused is normal, Ethan. You don't have to label yourself right now. What matters is understanding your heart and being true to yourself." He glanced at her briefly, the vulnerability in his eyes making her heart ache, and she squeezed his hand lightly, letting him know that whatever he felt, she would be there, standing by him through the uncertainty. As they continued walking, the conversation deepened, and Laura asked him to share what he had been feeling, what moments made him question himself, and what thoughts kept him awake at night, and Ethan spoke haltingly at first, then more freely, describing a mixture of emotions, attraction, curiosity, confusion, fear, and longing, and each word made Laura realize how complex and delicate this journey was, not just for him but for both of them as mother and child learning to navigate a new reality. Together, she listened carefully, never interrupting, offering small reassurances and nods, making sure he felt heard and understood, and as they reached a quiet bench under a large oak tree, she suggested they sit, and the weight of the conversation seemed to settle for a moment between them, the rustling of leaves and distant laughter from children at play providing a gentle, grounding backdrop. Laura pulled out her phone and began showing Ethan stories, videos, and articles of people his age who had struggled with similar questions, people who had felt isolated, uncertain, and afraid, yet eventually found acceptance, love, and happiness. And Ethan's eyes widened as he watched faces of others who had been brave enough to live authentically, realizing he was not alone in his feelings. And Laura explained patiently that discovering oneself was a process, a journey that often required patience, honesty, and courage, and that sometimes the heart takes time to understand what it truly desires, and that was perfectly okay. He shifted in his seat, fingers tapping nervously against the bench, and admitted, "It's just, what if my friends don't understand? What if they make fun of me? What if I lose them?" Laura's expression softened, a warm smile spreading across her face as she reached for his hand, letting her touch ground him, and she said firmly, "Then they weren't the friends you needed to keep anyway. The people who matter will love and accept you, exactly as you are. And those who don't, it's okay to let them go, because they weren't meant to be part of your journey." Ethan exhaled slowly, relief mingling with fear, and for the first time that morning, a small spark of hope flickered in his eyes, the kind that tells a person that maybe, just maybe, the world isn't as frightening as it seems when you have someone who truly supports you. Laura encouraged him to think of this as a new chapter, one where mistakes could be made safely, feelings could be explored honestly, and no judgment would follow, and she reminded him that it was normal to feel uncertain, to stumble, and even to change his mind as he learned more about himself, and each word she spoke planted a seed of confidence and self-acceptance in him that would grow steadily if nurtured with patience and love. They talked about emotions in general, crushes, admiration, the thrill of noticing someone's smile, the fear of being rejected, and Laura shared gentle, age-appropriate stories from her own teenage years, not to pressure him or give advice, but to show that feeling confused, longing, or vulnerable is part of growing up. And Ethan listened, sometimes laughing, sometimes sighing, sometimes frowning, but always absorbing the reassurance that life was not about having all the answers at once, but about learning to navigate feelings with honesty and integrity. At one point, a small dog ran past them, wagging its tail, and Ethan smiled, a real, unguarded smile, and Laura seized the moment to tell him that joy can be found even amidst confusion, and that it's okay to embrace happiness whenever it appears, that life is made up of both uncertainty and delight, and learning to accept both is part of growing stronger. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting gentle warmth on their faces, and Laura suggested that they take small steps, talking openly about his feelings, meeting people who shared similar experiences, exploring hobbies, and joining communities where acceptance was the norm. And Ethan nodded, understanding that she meant he didn't have to rush, that self-discovery is a journey, not a race. As they began walking back home, Laura held his hand lightly, feeling the connection between them deepen, and Ethan spoke more freely, sharing thoughts he hadn't dared to voice before, about crushes, moments of fear, dreams, and hopes for the future. And Laura listened, letting her heart swell with both love and determination, knowing that being present, being patient, and being unwaveringly supportive was the best gift she could give her son. By the time they reached the familiar driveway of their home, Ethan seemed lighter, as if a burden had been lifted, and Laura knew this was only the beginning, that many challenges would still come, but she also knew that together, with honesty, love, and trust, they could face whatever lay ahead. That night, as Ethan unpacked his backpack in his room and Laura washed the dishes in the kitchen, both of them reflected quietly on the day, the park, and the conversation, a sense of cautious hope settling over their hearts, and Laura resolved to continue guiding him gently, helping him understand himself, and providing a safe space where mistakes were allowed, emotions were validated, and love was unconditional. Because she understood that true support is not about solving every problem, but about standing beside someone as they learn to navigate life with courage, patience, and honesty, and she silently promised herself that she would never let fear, shame, or uncertainty take the place of love in their home. And the following weeks, Laura devoted herself to supporting Ethan in every way she could, spending their evenings together in quiet, meaningful conversations that allowed him to explore the feelings he hadn't dared to speak aloud before, and they began to create a routine where honesty and understanding formed the foundation of their relationship, with Laura carefully guiding him through each question, doubt, and emotion without pressure or judgment. And as they sat together on the couch one evening, flipping through pages of books and watching movies that portrayed young people navigating love, identity, and acceptance, Ethan slowly began to open up more about the subtle things that tugged at his heart, the moments he felt drawn to someone, the confusing thrill of noticing a boy's laugh or the way someone's eyes sparkled when they were happy. And Laura listened intently, sometimes nodding, sometimes offering soft advice, and always affirming that his feelings were valid, natural, and worthy of exploration. She shared gentle stories from her own youth, times when she had felt nervous, shy, or unsure about someone she liked, not to direct him, but to normalize the experience of longing, attraction, and heartbreak. And each conversation seemed to chip away at the fear he had carried for so long, replacing it with a tentative confidence that it was okay to feel, to question, and to hope. One evening, while baking together in the warm, fragrant kitchen, Ethan paused mid-stir, flour dusting the countertop, and looked at her hesitantly, a flush rising in his cheeks, and asked, "Mom, what if I like someone, and they don't like me back? What if I get hurt?" Laura smiled softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from his forehead, and said, "Heartbreak is part of life, Ethan, and it teaches us how strong we can be, how resilient our hearts are. But no matter what happens, I will always be here to help you heal, to hold your hand, and to remind you that love is still worth it." Ethan's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and a faint smile formed on his lips as he whispered, "You're really the best mom ever. I don't know what I'd do without you." Laura felt a surge of emotion so strong it took her breath away, knowing that the bond between them had grown deeper, richer, and more tender than ever before, not just as mother and son, but as two hearts navigating the delicate, confusing terrain of adolescence and self-discovery together, with love, patience, and understanding guiding every step. In the days that followed, Laura continued to encourage Ethan to explore his feelings safely, suggesting he write in a journal, create art, or even talk to trusted friends or mentors who could provide additional support and perspective. And she watched with quiet pride as he began to embrace small moments of joy, sharing laughter, curiosity, and hope for the first time in weeks, feeling less isolated and more confident in himself. She reminded him gently that there was no rush to define himself, no timeline for understanding who he was, and that every feeling he experienced was part of the journey, worthy of attention, compassion, and acceptance. And Ethan began to see that life didn't have to be full of fear and shame, that he could be honest, brave, and still be loved fully, without hiding any part of himself. One afternoon, while sitting together on the porch and sipping warm drinks, Ethan opened up about a boy he had noticed in class, someone kind, funny, and considerate, and the way he described the subtle excitement and nervous energy that came with noticing him made Laura's heart swell with pride and tenderness, because she realized her son was learning to trust himself, to notice attraction, and to process it with a healthy curiosity rather than fear or shame. Laura encouraged him to take small steps, to let feelings emerge naturally, and to recognize that the heart often moves slowly, but each moment of honesty, self-awareness, and courage built strength that would serve him well in life. Over time, their evenings became a safe haven for Ethan, where he could laugh, cry, and dream without judgment, and Laura found joy in guiding him, sharing wisdom, and witnessing his growth into a young man beginning to understand himself more fully, more tenderly, and more bravely with each passing day. And she continued to emphasize the importance of patience, empathy, and self-respect in every interaction he had with others, gently reinforcing that healthy relationships are built on communication, kindness, and mutual understanding, lessons that would carry him far beyond the challenges of adolescence. As Ethan's confidence grew, Laura noticed subtle changes, a brighter smile, a lighter step, a willingness to share thoughts and feelings she hadn't seen before, and she knew that these small victories were significant markers of progress, proof that her guidance, love, and unwavering support were helping him navigate the complexities of identity, attraction, and emotional growth. One evening, as they tidied up after a movie, Ethan paused, looking a little nervous, and said, "Mom, I think I'm ready to meet someone new, someone I like, someone I feel comfortable around." Laura's heart lifted with a mixture of excitement, pride, and a touch of apprehension, knowing this was a monumental step for him, a demonstration of courage, self-awareness, and trust in both himself and the support system she had worked so hard to provide. And she smiled warmly, squeezing his hand and saying, "That's wonderful, Ethan. Take your time, enjoy getting to know people, and remember, I'm always here for you." That night, after Ethan went to bed, Laura sat alone, reflecting on how far he had come in just a few weeks. The openness, the self-expression, the confidence, and the willingness to feel and explore without fear, and she felt a deep, steady pride and relief, knowing that her presence, patience, and unwavering support had given him the courage to embrace who he truly was, and that she had succeeded in creating a safe, nurturing environment where love, understanding, and acceptance thrived, allowing her son to grow, to explore, and to dream without reservation. The journey was far from over, but Laura knew that with continued guidance, gentle encouragement, and unconditional love, Ethan would continue to navigate the path of self-discovery with strength, honesty, and hope. And she silently promised herself that no matter the challenges, setbacks, or fears that lay ahead, she would remain his constant, his anchor, and his unwavering supporter, helping him step into a future full of possibility, self-acceptance, and the tender beginnings of young love. Knowing that every conversation, every shared moment, and every word of reassurance was a building block for the resilient, confident, and happy person he was becoming, and that their bond, strengthened by trust, patience, and mutual care, would carry them both through the delicate, exciting, and sometimes painful journey of growing up together. Summer had arrived with long, golden days that seemed to stretch endlessly, bringing with it a sense of freedom and possibility that Ethan embraced with a quiet excitement, and Laura noticed a change in him that made her heart swell with pride. The hesitance and fear that had once shadowed his every step were slowly giving way to curiosity, confidence, and a willingness to explore the world around him and the feelings inside him, and she knew that all the conversations, support, and patience they had shared over the past months were bearing fruit in ways both subtle and profound. As he smiled more easily, laughed without restraint, and carried himself with a new lightness that had been absent before, one bright afternoon, Ethan came home from a local art class he had joined, a shy but radiant smile lighting up his face, and Laura immediately sensed that something had shifted, that he was holding a secret of happiness he could no longer contain. And when he walked into the kitchen and said, "Mom, I met someone," her heart leapt with curiosity and gentle excitement, knowing this was a moment of courage, vulnerability, and new beginnings, and she immediately offered a warm, encouraging smile, leaning closer to hear more. Ethan's cheeks turned slightly pink, and his voice trembled with nervous energy as he continued, "His name's Liam, he's funny and kind, and he just makes me feel happy. Really happy, like I'm not alone." Laura felt a rush of relief and joy wash over her, a powerful mix of pride, love, and satisfaction that she had been there to guide him, to create a safe space for him to grow, and to help him understand that his feelings were valid, natural, and worth embracing. She hugged him tightly, whispering softly that she was so proud of him and that happiness looked good on him, and Ethan, feeling accepted and supported, relaxed into the embrace, a sense of warmth and security settling over them both. As if all the months of uncertainty, fear, and doubt had led to this moment of joy and connection. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting a golden glow through the windows, they sat together, sharing stories about school, friends, and the moments that had made Ethan smile that day, and Laura listened carefully as he described Liam with a mixture of admiration, excitement, and cautious optimism, noting the way his eyes sparkled when he spoke, the subtle nervous laughter that betrayed his excitement, and the warmth that spread across his face whenever he thought of the boy, and she realized that this was more than just a crush. It was the first authentic expression of attraction and self-confidence that Ethan had allowed himself to feel, and it filled her with a profound sense of accomplishment and hope. In the days that followed, Ethan began to navigate these new feelings with curiosity and care, reaching out to Liam in small ways, sharing moments of laughter and conversation, and Laura continued to provide gentle guidance, reminding him to move at his own pace, to honor his feelings, and to communicate openly and honestly, without rushing or forcing anything, and she encouraged him to reflect on what happiness meant to him, to embrace the uncertainty of first feelings, and to cherish the joy of discovering someone who made his heart feel light. Laura also emphasized the importance of patience and respect in relationships, teaching Ethan that understanding someone else's emotions was as important as understanding his own, and that love was not only about attraction but also about empathy, kindness, and shared growth, lessons he absorbed gradually, quietly, and meaningfully, and which strengthened both his self-awareness and his budding confidence. As Ethan's bond with Liam developed, he began to smile more openly at school, engage with friends with renewed warmth, and show a calm self-assurance in his daily life that had been missing before, and Laura noticed that the shy, anxious boy she had once worried about was transforming into someone ready to embrace life with honesty and courage, someone willing to take risks in love, friendship, and self-expression, all while being guided by the safety net of a mother's unconditional support. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Ethan leaned against Laura's shoulder and whispered, "Mom, thank you for helping me be me. I don't know what I'd have done without you." She held him close, feeling a wave of emotion so strong it left her speechless for a moment, and whispered back that it had been her honor to guide him, to stand by him, and to witness the bravery and resilience of his heart, and in that quiet moment, mother and son shared a bond deeper than words, a bond forged through love, understanding, patience, and shared experiences, a bond that would carry them through all the challenges, joys, and heartbreaks of life. Over the summer, Ethan's confidence continued to grow, and he approached social situations with a newfound ease, often sharing small victories with Laura, like having a meaningful conversation with a friend about feelings, noticing someone he admired without fear, or expressing appreciation and kindness without hesitation. And each of these moments reinforced the lessons of courage, self-respect, and emotional intelligence she had worked so hard to instill, and Laura watched with quiet pride, knowing that these were the foundations for a lifetime of healthy relationships, self-acceptance, and authentic living. As summer deepened, Ethan began planning small outings with Liam, simple adventures that allowed them to get to know each other in safe, natural ways, and he shared the details with Laura enthusiastically. From the jokes they laughed at together to the little gestures that made his heart flutter, and she guided him gently, helping him navigate boundaries, emotions, and the delicate dance of first affection with wisdom, empathy, and encouragement, always reinforcing that his feelings were valid, natural, and beautiful. Laura also used this time to remind Ethan about the importance of self-care, reflection, and emotional honesty, teaching him to recognize when he felt happy, scared, excited, or overwhelmed, and how to communicate those feelings in healthy ways, skills that would not only strengthen his budding romantic experiences but also fortify his confidence and resilience in life overall. And Ethan absorbed these lessons eagerly, applying them instinctively as he interacted with Liam, friends, and family. By the end of summer, Ethan had grown in ways Laura had only hoped for, displaying a balance of curiosity, self-awareness, and courage that made her feel both proud and humbled, knowing that guiding a child through identity, feelings, and first love required patience, unwavering support, and gentle wisdom, and that the bond they had forged, rooted in trust, honesty, and unconditional love, would serve as a lifelong foundation for his confidence, happiness, and resilience. On the last evening of summer, as they watched the sky turn shades of orange and pink, Ethan turned to Laura with a contented smile, a mix of gratitude, excitement, and serenity in his eyes, and said softly, "Mom, I feel like I really know who I am now, and I'm happy with it." Laura's heart swelled with joy, relief, and pride, and she hugged him tightly, whispering that she had always known he was brave and remarkable, and that no matter what paths he took, she would always be by his side, ready to guide, support, and love him unconditionally. And in that embrace, mother and son shared the quiet triumph of a journey completed together, a journey of self-discovery, courage, and the tender beginnings of love, connection, and understanding that would carry Ethan into the future with confidence, joy, and hope, knowing that he was seen, accepted, and deeply cherished for exactly who he was, and that the lessons of patience, honesty, and love would stay with him forever, shaping the person he would continue to become and the relationships he would forge with care, empathy, and courage.